any point in the evening, feel free to message or message me or message the group if you have a question. We are thrilled to be able to be together virtually and are so glad you could join us. All right, we're going to get started. So welcome. My name is Marika Desmond, and I work with Vicki Norden, who's a candidate for State Senate in District 17. We are thrilled to have you here today to talk about keeping California safe. Thank you for joining us. As we get started, we're going to defer all questions to the end. So if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat box or chat directly to me at any point. I'm happy to answer any questions that or to help facilitate those questions as we get started.
So Marika, could I ask a question for the people who have perhaps called in? If they have a question, how does that work for them?
Well, tonight we actually don't have anybody who's called in yet, but we can cross that bridge when we get to there. I think I can actually text them.
Okay.
But yeah, I think so far we've got everybody on their computers or phones. So we are thrilled to have you. I want to just introduce Vicki Norden. And before I do that, I want to give you an overview of how our evening is going to go. We are going to have Vicki Norden will share a few words with us and give us a little bit of context for tonight's discussion. And then we are thrilled to have Chief Ron Lawrence, who will share some of his not only 30 years in law enforcement, but also some of the ballot measures that are coming up that we should be aware of. And then at the end, we'll spend some time doing questions and answers. And feel free to type questions in any point during the conversation, but we will focus on them at the end. So with that, I'd like to introduce Vicki Norden. Vicki Norden has been in the community as a leader, a problem solver, as a community advocate for over 20 years. Her career began as a realtor, but her public service is really focused on justice, on advocacy for families, for children. She was a court-appointed special advocate. I know she'll share with us a little bit more about that. And she also served on the civil grand jury, which is a citizen panel that investigates government corruption and injustice on behalf of the community and taxpayers everywhere. So she is a justice girl. She is running for District 17, which stretches from Santa Cruz to San Luis Obispo. And I'm going to turn it over to her to carry on.
Oh, thank you, Marika, and thank you everyone for spending the evening with us tonight on this really important Zoom and opportunity that we have with Chief Ron Lawrence. As Marika said, my name is Vicki Norden, and for those of you who don't know me, I am a justice girl. My father was a police detective. I grew up with my dad, always making sure we were doing the right things, but I did get in trouble for fighting with the school bully. Yes, I did. My poor mom, she didn't know what to do with me then, and I think maybe some of the California political insiders don't know what to do with me either. Seeing what's happening in our state really brings out that justice girl in me. In my public service, as Marika had said, I fought for justice at different levels. I have served on the civil grand jury, looking into claims of serious government corruption, inefficiencies, and injustice. I've worked as a family liaison in our justice system, helping families to navigate the system and advocate for their loved ones. And I served as a court-appointed special advocate for children in the classrooms and for families in the courtrooms. I'm running for state senate, and as I've been running it, I have it showed me a whole new level of problems that are out there. And it's really gotten me fired up for things that need to change and why I'm running. The reason that we're here tonight is that we feel that our state is less safe than it was 4 years ago. Crime in our state is increasing, whether it's the sudden increase of smash and grab and how easily the criminals are being released back into the streets today. And Chief Lawrence has spent 30 years in law enforcement. He's going to share with us what he has seen in the history of how we got here, how we came here today. And I want you to know that there are forces that are at work, sometimes well-intended ones, that are slowly targeting our justice system in Sacramento today. Many times those forces come in subtle legislation, legislation sneaking massive overhauls into law. And last month, as legislators worked on the budget, two bills were sneakily stuck to the budget bills. It was known as SB 118 and AB 88. And when you add those bills to the budget, they're called trailer bills, budget trailer bills, and they get less discussion and less publicity. So it's a great way to sneak bad bills through. And I'm happy to report to you that it did not go through. This particular bill would have cleared criminals' records if they did a certain program. The bill never said what kind of a program it was, how long the program would be, or any of the helpful details. If someone had committed violent robbery or even a DUI, they could undergo this program and have it taken off their record, commit the same offense after their treatment, and so on. This would have been a major blow to enforce laws. It would allow evil to keep perpetuating, all in the name of rehabilitation. And yes, we do want to see people rehabilitated, but we also need to protect our community. Our justice system is built on the idea that committing a crime once might be a mistake, and you might learn from it and change and not continue on that pathway. But repeating a crime, especially a serious crime multiple times, is seen as really dangerous to our community safety. Our laws are created to identify those people who keep choosing wrong and to keep them off our streets. Someone who's convicted of drunk driving should not apply to drive school buses. I'm sure you would agree. And someone convicted of abusing a child should not be a preschool teacher. As I said, thankfully, this bill was stopped. Because of a group of district attorneys across the state of California recognized that it was a major overhaul to our justice system. And perhaps many of you who are here tonight on the Zoom even contacted your legislators to say, we do not want this bill. So it would have made a major overhaul to our justice system disguised as a budget trailer. But be watchful, because this bill probably will be brought up again. And when I hear things like that, it's like, this gets the justice girl going. I don't like those kind of things when they're trying to just sneak it through without people knowing. I'm so glad that many of you could join us today, and I'm really thrilled to have Chief Ron Lawrence here with us. And I want to tell you a little bit about him, if I could. He grew up on a rice farm in Northern California. He knows what hard work, honesty, and authenticity look like. I read his bio. He got his start in law enforcement at an early age of 19 years old as a recruit into the Sacramento Sheriff's Basic Recruit Academy. Since then, he has worked throughout Northern California and held many different assignments, including a court bailiff, a jail deputy, a patrol officer, an investigator, street crimes and vice, internal affairs investigator, a deputy sheriff, and most recently, police chief in 2 different cities. You're well known. I was talking to one of the senators the other day, and he said, oh yes, he was the chief of police in our area. He's the immediate past president of the California Police Chiefs Association, representing police chiefs throughout our state. He has degrees in criminal justice, leadership, and even spent a stint at the FBI National Academy. I want to thank you, Chief Lawrence, for all your work in keeping California safe, and we look forward to hearing from you this evening. Go ahead.
Thank you, Vicki. That was a very, very kind introduction and very flattering. I know I don't look like a rice farmer, but I did grow up on a rice farm. My roots are here in Northern California, and I appreciate that. And thank you so much for giving us the time. I'll introduce Kelly Reed here, my partner. She's with our coalition in this Proposition 20 and helps me get the message out, and she does a fantastic job. She'll be running the PowerPoint tonight. But I wanted to take just a minute and thank you for this time, because really at the end of this evening, I have an ask of you, and the ask is to support Prop 20 for a very important reason. She mentioned that I'm the immediate past president of the California Police Chiefs Association. And our association represents 332 police chiefs in the state of California. All of the municipal police chiefs are represented by the California Police Chiefs Association. And we're nonpartisan. We're not Republican, we're not Democrat. I mean, we have police chiefs who are Republicans, we have police chiefs who are Democrats, we have police chiefs who are moderates. That's not the lens with which the Cal Chiefs sees things through. We see things through public safety. That's our objective. And our only objective is to make sure our communities stay safe, that we protect our communities from bad legislation, that we champion good legislation, and that we make sure we have fewer victims in our communities. And I agree with Vicki, what you described yourself as, and I applaud you, because we need more people, more leaders like you in our world, and particularly our state. California has gone in a wrong direction with regards to public safety. And my plea to you is to support Prop 20 for some very important reasons. So I just pointed that out, that California Police Chiefs Association we care about public safety. That's what we do. And we protect the lion's share of the population in our state are protected by California police chiefs. So objectively, we're in a unique time in our nation and our state. We're a very divided nation. And of course, my profession is taking the brunt of a lot of that divisiveness. But when it comes to victims and victims' rights, victims' advocacy, you won't find any better partner than the California Police Chiefs Association. So that's what we're here to talk about. And so when it comes to Prop 20, if I'll ask Kelly to start the PowerPoint here, and hopefully you can all see that as she's getting it started. Can you see that, Vicki?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So California, as Vicki mentioned, there were some, what I would say, some well-intended decisions regarding criminal justice reform. I think there were some good ideas, but they had some very bad consequences. It started in 2011 with Assembly Bill 109. Now this was prison realignment. This was then Governor Jerry Brown, who was told by the U.S. Supreme Court that he needed to reduce the California prison population in the state of California. We have 33 prisons in our state, and so he was on a mission to do that. Well, 8109 took inmates who were in prison and pushed them out of the prison system and into our local county jails throughout the state. And overnight, that filled up our county jail system. It also did what's called post-release community supervision, which pushed a lot of those prison inmates out into our communities under the supervision of our local county probation departments. Now, the problem with this was it not only filled our jails overnight, making them at capacity. So some of the people that needed to go to jail that we were arresting in our communities, some pretty bad actors, they were released pretty regularly. And those that were even low-level criminals couldn't even get into jail for some property crimes and so forth. So imagine, if you will, if your car was broken into or your house was broken into and we catch them and we take them to jail, and there's no room at the jail because they're filled up with prisoners that were at the prison, you can imagine how that might make you feel, because that inmate, now the person we just arrested for victimizing you, has been released. So that happened in 2011. Well intended to reduce the prison population, but it had an impact on criminal justice. Then in 2014, Prop 47 was passed. Unfortunately, this was sold to the voters as the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Initiative. There was nothing safe about that initiative for our neighborhoods or our schools at all. That title and summary, and the Attorney General is responsible for the title and summary, and the Attorney General at that point was Kamala Harris. That title and summary really, I think, in my estimation, fooled a lot of Californians, because what Prop 47 did, it did several things. But primarily, it raised the property crimes from $400 ceiling to a $950 ceiling. And what I mean by that is anything below $400 was a misdemeanor. Anything above $400 was a felony. When Prop 47 passed, that raised that up to $950. That means anything that's stolen less than $950 is a misdemeanor. Anything over $950 is a felony. Now, you might think that that sounds reasonable. The problem with it is you have people that are going into our local businesses, our Safeways, our Walmarts, our Targets, and they will steal stuff that's less than $950. And because it's a misdemeanor and the jail's full, they get a ticket. They don't go to jail. They get a citation with a court date. That same individual could walk across the street to the next mom and pop store or the next Raley's or the next Walmart, steal another $900 or less, $950 or less, and because it's a misdemeanor, even if they're caught, they still get a ticket. They don't go to jail. So you've got this proliferation of people stealing stuff up and down our state as a result of Prop 47. The other thing, this is a key element, that Prop 47 did is it reduced the possession of drugs from felonies down to misdemeanors. And I mean hard drugs, methamphetamines, cocaine, heroin, and it made those only misdemeanor possessions. Now that is not addressed in Prop 20, but what is this fixing the property crimes, and I'll get into that in a minute. And it's going to help us, frankly, reduce drug addicted folks in our communities and reduce homelessness, because we've got a tremendous amount of homelessness people who are out there, and a lot of them are suffering from drug addiction. Now, there's not a police chief in California that wants to see a drug addict in jail. That's not what we want. We believe it's a sickness. We believe it's a disease. But the criminal justice system played a crucial role in getting those folks some help and making sure that they went to mandated court rehab to get their addiction fixed. None of them went to prison. They got probation with terms that they had to get clean and sober. They get once, twice, 3 times arrested and mandatory drug rehabilitation sentences. And hopefully our objective was that they would become clean and sober and productive members of our society and stop ripping us off to feed their drug habit. And so Prop 47 really messed that up, but Prop 20 has got a fix for that. And then lastly, Prop 57 really took a lot of control out of the parole board, and it allowed for a lot of early release of some violent offenders. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So we can go to the next slide. We're going to get into what Prop 20 does. So Proposition 20, let's watch this video real quick.
Fight back at keepcalsafe.org.
Well, we missed the audio there, but this was a video, and there's a few videos in here, and I'll be honest, they're serious, they're a little bit dark, but it really highlights how dangerous Prop 47, Prop 57, and AB 109 were, and what Prop 20 is going to do. So Prop 20 does a few things. Let me back up here. So ultimately, all of these things over since 2011, this criminal justice reform, we're starting to see the impacts. We've seen what Prop 57 does. And by the way, it was originally billed, Prop 57, that only those that were eligible to get out of prison early were going to be offenders that were non-violent, non-serious, and non-sex offenders. And then, after it's passed, a judge rules that sex offenders, in fact, could be released early as a part of Prop 57. So this really tied the hands of the parole board. Prop 47 crimes are up. In fact, I will challenge you with this. Go to any one of your local businesses in your local town and ask them if they get ripped off, if they get shoplifters, more shoplifting today than they did, say, 5 or 10 years ago. I guarantee you the answer is yes. It's so bad. We have some stores that have stopped calling us. They've given up because they know nothing's going to happen. So they know that an officer is going to arrive, and even if the suspect gets caught, they're going to get a citation, and they're not going to go to jail. They're not going to get help, and they keep coming back. And then, of course, when you put AB 109, Prop 57, and Prop 47 together, this criminal justice reform that we've seen over the last 10 years, we've really seen some unintended consequences that have really caused some, I'll call, long-term damage to the state of California, to include increasing our exploding homeless population, which you can easily start to tie into all of these misguided propositions. So let's go into the 4 things that this does.
Hate your neighbor. Someone different. Under California laws, hate crimes aren't considered crimes. Seriously, stop hate at keepcaliforniasafe.org.
So one of the first and one of the most important things that Prop 20 does is it expands the list for violent crimes with which early release is not an option. And this is important because I'm going to read some to you. There are some seriously violent crimes that are no longer in the violent crime category. And you see some of them there in the PowerPoint. Rape of an unconscious person is no longer a violent crime. Trafficking of a child for sex is no longer a violent crime. Assault of a peace officer, felony domestic violence, and violence is in the title of that. These are not considered violent crimes under current California law as a result of these Prop 57. Let me read some more to you because there's about 25 of them. Drive-by shooting or shooting in an inhabited dwelling or vehicle, assault with a firearm, assault with a deadly weapon. Solicitation to commit murder is not a violent crime. serial arson, assault with caustic chemicals, felony assault likely to use great bodily force or create great bodily injury, false imprisonment or taking a hostage when avoiding arrest or use them as a shield. That's not a violent crime. It's absurd that these are not violent crimes. Any felony where a deadly weapon is used, felony hate crime. You saw that video there just a little while ago. Felony elder or dependent abuse, felony use of force or threats against a witness or a victim of a crime. That means if you're a witness or a victim in a court case and you're threatened bodily harm by the suspect or the defendant in that case, it's not a violent crime. Any crime requiring lifetime sex offender registration. It's absurd that these are not violent crimes. And in fact, if you go to our website, the yeson20.org, you'll find the full list of those violent crimes. And what we need to do is put those right where they belong in the violent crime category. Now, the opposition will tell you, well, this is going to throw more people in prison. It's not true. It's going to keep those people in prison that need to be there to either get the help that they need and stop making victims in California, or let's face it, there are some people that are in prison, they're not going to avail themselves of the help, and we have to deal with them in a different way because frankly, they're going to do more harm to our communities and create more victims. So that's why this is an important piece of Prop 20. Okay, the second thing that Prop 20 does is it addresses that serial theft that I mentioned. I told you that Prop 47 raised that ceiling to $950. Well, what Prop 20 does is that threshold. Now, let me be real clear for this. It's not by the arrest, it's by the conviction. And that's a key difference because a police officer might make an arrest, but a conviction is when a judge or a jury has determined, or they pled guilty, that yes, in fact, they committed that crime, and now they have been convicted of that crime. So what Prop 20 does is not on the first conviction of theft, not on the second conviction of theft, third to be convicted 3 times, and it allows our district attorneys to file that charge as a felony. And what this does is it focuses on those serial theft rings that are going up and down our state and ripping us off. They're going from city to city to city, and you can see it on the news. Sometimes they go in droves of people. They'll go in and go into a store, and they'll just, in the middle of the day, they'll start stealing stuff, and then they'll run out. And so this Prop 20 fixes that because it puts some teeth back into serial shoplifting and serial theft rings. Now, what it doesn't do, it doesn't target that first-time offender. It doesn't target that or even that drug person that's addicted to drugs that stole the second time. But what it does is it targets those serial theft rings and also those who are totally addicted to drugs that they keep stealing from your unlocked car or our businesses to feed their drug habit, and it will get them back into drug court. It'll get them back into a position where the criminal justice system can help save their lives by getting them clean and sober, which is what we were doing before Prop 47 passed. It's been just, theft crime has been an explosion in our communities. Some of our videos a little bit glitchy here, but.
Sorry about that. Keep going.
Steal up to $950 in property. Take what you want, as often as you want. In California, it's only a misdemeanor, fueling an explosion in shoplifting and other theft. Stop the stealing at keepcalsafe.org.
So the third thing that Prop 20 will do, when Prop 47 was passed, it took away a lot of the DNA collection on people who were being arrested. I mentioned those drug crimes that were reduced from felonies down to misdemeanor. Under Prop 47, any crime that was reduced to a misdemeanor, we could no longer collect DNA on those crimes. Prop 20 will allow us to, on those people who are arrested for those crimes that were felonies before Prop 47, to use DNA collection and make sure that we can use that as a tool to solve crimes. DNA collection is it's the 21st century version of fingerprints. Fingerprints, through my career, have helped us solve crimes and identify suspects. DNA has taken that to a whole new level. And I only need to mention the name, the Golden State Killer, to explain how important DNA collection is. DNA collection not only allows us a much more better tool to identify the suspects who perpetrate crimes, but it also, equally important, allows us to identify those who didn't commit a crime and exonerate innocent people. This is really important for criminal justice in the future of policing. When you take away that methodology of solving crimes through DNA collection, it's a real problem. You can see since Prop 47, cold case hits have dropped over 2,000 in California, with more than 450 of those being violent crimes, such as homicide, rape, and those types of crimes, robbery, some seriously violent crimes. So DNA collection is important to us for the efficacy of policing. It is a very scientifically proven method to solve crimes. And so it's a great tool for us to use. And Prop 20 will help fix that unintended consequence. The fourth and last thing that Prop 20 does is it puts power back to the Board of Parole hearings. Now in California, we have a Board of Parole hearings. It's a group of people. You might have seen the movie The Shawshank Redemption with Morgan Freeman. And remember, the parole board kept denying his parole over and over and over, and they finally gave him parole. Well, in California, we have something similar. It's not the movies, but it's something similar. So this Board of Parole hearings, their duty is to review individual cases and determine if somebody's eligible for early release from parole. So this is somebody who's been arrested, they've been convicted, they're doing their sentence in prison, and that Board of Parole hearings is responsible for determining who gets released early and who has to do the bulk of their sentence. And almost none of them do their whole sentence anyway, but they can get released for good time, good behavior. They can get released for earning their education degrees and those types of things. So the Board of Parole hearings is responsible for doing that. But here's the problem. When AB 109 passed, it tied the hands of the Board of Parole hearings, and it said that they can only consider an inmate's most recent conviction before they can offer early release. Now you might think, well, what's the big deal? That's only what we're talking about. The problem with that is that last conviction might be some low-level crime that person got arrested for after they had years and years and years of violent crimes in their history. This might be a murder. This might be somebody who did several rapes. It might be a serial rapist. It might be a child molester. This might be somebody who's a really bad actor who continually does harm in our communities. And we finally, multiple times have held this person accountable for their crimes and accountable for the victims that they've created. And now, here they're in prison yet again, and the Board of Parole hearings can only consider their most recent charge. And it might be vandalism. It might be petty theft. It might be some low-level crime that they committed, and that's the only thing that the Board of Parole can consider when they're looking at early release. So let's talk a little bit now about what the initiative does not do. Prop 20 does not have a wholesale repeal of Prop 47 or Prop 57. It's very carefully and narrowly drafted, and it fixes those very specific things that I mentioned. Very specific, but very serious and dangerous flaws that were contained in those other propositions. Prop 20 does not put additional people in prison. In fact, it just narrowly focuses on those really bad actors and those serial theft ring people and those serial theft folks that are addicted to drugs. And it keeps those people in the criminal justice system to either, one, get the help that they need to change their behavior and become productive members of society, or two, keeps them away from our communities and keeps them from victimizing more people in our cities. Prop 20 keeps those people in prison who've committed real crimes: rape of unconscious person, human trafficking, assault with a deadly weapon, and many of those other ones that I mentioned to you. And I would encourage you, visit our website, and you'll see the full list. Abducting a minor for prostitution is not a violent crime. Seriously, that is appalling to me that California would allow this to happen. So Prop 20 will fix that. Okay, next.
Beat your spouse. Abuse the one you live with. Under California law, domestic violence isn't considered a violent crime. Seriously, stand with survivors at keepcaliforniasafe.org.
I should have mentioned, not only does the Police Chiefs Association support this, but the California District Attorneys Association, the California League of Cities, which is your mayors, your city council members, and several victim advocacy groups support this bill. So let me go over the high voter turnout. So we've done several polling on Prop 20, and we've had very good voter turnout. Now remember, you need 51%. You can see overall here, our proposition is polling at 76%. That is amazingly high. Only 13% would say they would vote against it. 58% are strongly for it, and only 6% are strongly against. So our Prop 20 is polling very, very well. That's why we believe this is going to have a yes in November. That first piece of it, the violent crime piece, 81%, with a total of them being 53% very convinced that that's important. 81% polling that violent crime is a serious issue. The theft piece, 70% say that's very convincing, and 35% of that 70% say it's very convincing. Probably people that own stores and keep getting ripped off. On the DNA collection, you can see here that 65% believe it's very convincing, with 30% of that 65% believing that it's very convincing, and only 26% say it's unconvincing.
Pimp a child, traffic her for sex, sell her, own her. Under California law, child trafficking isn't classified a violent crime. Seriously, protect the children at keepcalsafe.org.
So here's how you can help. And there's a list of things on there that you can do, but I would encourage you to visit our website, yeson20.org. Please write it down, visit it. You can follow us on social media, but please visit yeson20.org. Of course, funding for this proposition is important, but equally important is your voice. And that's my ask of you. Tell everybody you can, because voters, unfortunately, in California, and you all know this, voters, they don't read the propositions. They read the title and summary, and then they move on. And I'm guilty of this too. We get lazy. We get busy in our own lives, and we don't tend to take a deep dive into a lot of the propositions. And we need to. Californians and Americans in general need to know what's going on at the ballot box. So visit yeson20.org. Please tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your Rotary Club, your Kiwanis Club, your Seroptimus, whatever you're involved with, your faith-based groups. Please get the word out on yeson20.org. There's going to be a lot of opposition. There's going to be people that are going to tell false narratives about this. But I'm telling you right now, as a tenured police chief with almost 31 years experience, almost a full decade as a police chief in 2 different cities, my whole adult life has been spent saving victims and protecting victims from crimes. And my plea to you is to help us take California back, help us keep California safe, and help us get Prop 20 passed. And with that, Vicki, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Oh, that's wonderful. Marika, maybe you've been monitoring some of the questions. I think the presentation was very clear. I just would like to add, when they see the ballot, when they see the title on the ballot, many times they're so misleading. I'm just trying to find what that title is. I don't have it in front of me. Could you tell the people what this is, how misleading it is for people, and why it's so important? It's not going to be on the ballot proposition. It's not going to say yes on 20. What is it going to say, Chief? Exactly.
Actually, Kelly, do you have it handy right in front of you?
I don't, but I'm going to get it for you. And also, until the 21st of this month, we don't know for sure, because that is when the Attorney General and the Secretary of State have the opportunity to alter that from what they originally provided. But I'm going to put into the chat box what it is currently. Oh, looks like somebody. Oh, wait, hold it.
Sure.
Somebody put into the chat box what Ballotpedia has. That is not accurate. Ballotpedia, just so everyone knows, they have, in their infinite wisdom, decided that they don't want to put what the campaign has, which I get, but they also don't want to put what the Secretary of State and the Attorney General has, because they also think that that is biased. And so they've come up with their own title for this. That is not it either. So don't go with what Ballotpedia has. So I'll get you what is official. Hang tight.
Okay, and while you do that, Kelly, I just want to say to the people, you're going to want to vote yes on Proposition 20. Just remember that, 2020, yes, we want change for 2020.
That's a great way to remember that.
You know, it's just yes on 20, because what happens with these propositions is they just tweak the title, and then people don't know, oh, was this that? So just remember, yes on 20, 2020, time for change.
I've gotten a couple I'm sorry to interrupt, Chief.
Oh, I was going to say it's an excellent way to remember that. Yes, on 2020. I'm going to use that, Vicki.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I had a couple of questions come in privately about what you saw, Chief Lawrence, in the response to AB 109 and Prop 47 and 57. Can you talk a little bit more about what you saw and for all the good intentions that lawmakers claimed, what did you actually see as a result?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a fair question. And AB 109, interestingly enough, we don't know why, but we saw auto theft spiked. Auto theft went through the roof after AB 109. Don't know why, but they did. And then you'll see in Prop 47, property crimes went up as well. But you'll hear the opponents say, "Oh no, crime's down, crime's down." Well, crime's it's down in some categories because businesses stopped calling us. You can decriminalize something, and then all of a sudden your crime rate will go down. But that doesn't mean that people aren't still victims of that theft or that crime. And I'll share with you a very personal story. I have a loved one, a family member of mine, who became addicted to drugs. So there's no family that's immune to being addicted to drugs. And this person, my relative, got arrested twice, not once, but twice for possession of drugs. This was pre-Prop 47. I'm happy to say he's been clean and sober now for 8 years. But he will be the first to tell you that had he not gone to jail, had he not hit rock bottom, and had the criminal justice system not helped him find his way to sobriety, he would be one of three things. He'd be homeless, he'd be in prison, or he'd be dead. And so I'm a firm believer, and that's my personal story. So I saw that firsthand. I see it on the streets every day. I don't have to tell you, I guarantee you in your community, you've seen the explosion of homelessness. We've seen it all up and down California. We've seen it in states like Washington. And it's where we've gotten loose on drugs. Now, we don't want anybody to go to prison, but we do want them to get the help that they need. Prop 20 is going to help do that because these folks are out there stealing things. They're stealing over and over and over, and they're not being held accountable. And what I mean by accountability, meaning changing their behavior. I don't mean throwing people in prison and throwing away the key. I mean changing behavior so that they stop committing crimes. That's accountability. But we have to start calling it what it is. We have criminals out there doing bad things in our communities, and we have to not be soft on that. We have to call it out, and we have to fix the problem, or it's just going to keep getting worse.
It is, and I just want to make a comment along that line is the homeless situation. You know, we have over 100 and some thousand homeless people, and a lot of it has to do with the drugs, and they really to get their lives turned around and feel like there is a hope for the future is we need to get them off the streets, and we need to help them so they're not continuing to go out and steal for that habit and get them cleaned up. We need the drug courts, we need the rehab centers, and it's so important. And what I hear, you know, Chief Lawrence saying is that that's what we want to do. We want to see the change that really needs to happen for our communities to get the people off the street, to get them the help that they need, and not allow them to even put themselves in a very dangerous situation. I mean, they're out there with a gun trying to steal or do something crazy, and you know, they end up throwing their life away. And those are the unintended consequences of not dealing with it when you just letting it continue to grow. So I am in such full agreement with that, and have worked a lot with drug addicts and families, and I have seen just the pain and the sorrow of it. But yes, going to jail helps them wake up many times, and it gives them that choice of getting into a program and getting the help they really need, because sometimes they're just too ashamed to say they even need the help. But sometimes when they get to that place and they're faced with it, they are able to get the help they need. So I agree with you.
That's right.
Chief
You say the same thing about the violent crimes too. Those categories I mentioned that Prop 20 puts back into the violent crime category. A lot of those folks, when they're in prison, they get anger management help. They get help with alcohol addiction or drug addiction. And those violent crime categories, the criminal justice system plays an important role for them as well. You think about a sex offender. Now, how they got there, how they, what makes their brain tick or whatever, I don't know. But I do know that in the prison system, they have professionals that try to work with folks to get them the help that they need so that they can stop reoffending. And those violent crime categories that I mentioned, it's appalling that they're not in the violent crime, that they're eligible for early release. And when you read them, when you go to the website, your jaw will drop.
One of the questions I was asked as a follow-up is currently under the Prop 47 guidelines, what does happen to somebody who, in lieu of the drug courts, what happens to somebody who is ticketed for possession of heroin or something else like that?
They're not taken in. They're given a citation over and over and over because it's a misdemeanor crime now. So unless they can arrested for sales of drugs, so you got somebody with a scale and large quantities of money and large quantities of the drugs, that's still a felony. But mere possession is just a misdemeanor now, and that was a reckless way for California to deal with drug addiction. Frankly, Prop 20 is the first step in that direction, and it's going to help a lot because they have to find a way to feed their drug addiction, and they steal. They're out there ripping us off, and so they're part of the serial theft issue. And right now, what happens is they don't go to jail. They get a ticket with a court date, and they never show up to court. So then it turns to a warrant. They get rearrested over and over and over. And then eventually, even if they do find themselves in jail, again, they're convicted of a misdemeanor low-level crime, so they're not going to be in jail for very long. It's just a perpetual cycle. It's really unfortunate.
Kelly had put in the chat box that the title given by the state for Prop 20 is restricts parole for nonviolent offenders, authorizes felony sentences for certain offenses currently treated only as misdemeanors, initiative statute. So that we'll stay tuned and we'll send out more information when we get the updated title, but that is the summary or the title currently given. Chief Lawrence, another question that I got was, what did AB 109 do to the populations in the jails, and how did the makeup of criminals in the jail system, how did that change under AB 109?
That's somebody that's got a lot of knowledge about the criminal justice system, because imagine, if you will, you've got there is some 165,000 inmates in the California prison systems, 33 state prisons, and those are the bad actors. People, if you get to state prison, you've committed some serious crimes or some violent crimes. So when they pushed them down into the county jail system, it not only filled the jail by population, by numbers, but it also increased the criminal sophistication in those jails. The jail population became far, far more violent. They became far, far more gang infested. And so imagine, and this was the crisis of AB 109. Imagine now you've got the county jail system filled with these bad actors who used to be in prison. They've been pushed down to the county jail system, and I arrest some low-level first-time offender for breaking into a car. They don't have any criminal records. It's, maybe first or second time they've done something. It's a property crime. I book them into the county jail system. And now that person's exposed to these other bad actors. I mean, that only creates more criminality. So it was a flawed thought at the beginning. And so the jail sophistication, you can ask any sheriff in California and they'll tell you, after AB 109, their prisoners in county jail system became far more criminally sophisticated. And, the jails have to release people eventually too. So that spills out into our communities, and eventually we've got more crime in our local cities.
Thank you. Another question was, how does this affect policing in communities as officers can't make the arrests or have to treat these previous more strict convictions as misdemeanors or felonies as misdemeanors? How has this challenged officers and law enforcement on the street?
Oh, well, it's extremely challenging. It's frustrating. People that get into my profession, despite what you've heard in the last 6 weeks with all the civil unrest, people that get into the policing profession, they do it because they care. They care about people. They care about their community. They do it because it's a noble profession and they have a passion to help people and to prevent victimization. And so when you've got a police officer who's highly trained, highly skilled, has a lot of empathy and a lot of heart, a lot of care, and they can't protect victims from these crimes, it's disheartening. It's really a real challenge. But when we arrest people and we see them out, they're just continually arrested, it certainly gets frustrating. With the serial theft ring, the Prop 20 will lower that third conviction down to $250. That will help tremendously, because when we arrest somebody, the first time and then they're convicted. And then we arrest somebody the second time and they're convicted. On that third arrest, we know that if they're convicted, because we'll have access to their rap sheet, we'll know that that's going to be potentially be a felony charged by the district attorney. Of course, that's at the court system, not the street level, not the police officer level, but it's still going to help support what we're doing on the streets, because it puts more meaning into holding people accountable for committing crimes.
Another question from the group is which groups are you seeing muster in opposition of this? Who are we anticipating is going to come against Proposition 20?
Well, I'll ask Kelly to help me out on this one a little bit, but I can tell you the ACLU will be against it. We know Jerry Brown, former Governor Jerry Brown, is adamantly opposed to it. He mentioned that on his way out. And because I've been on the Cal Chiefs board since 2011, so I was with the association when Jerry Brown was governor, and of course now Newsom. And so we've got those types of oppositions. They're the police reformers, if you will, the ones that really don't believe anybody should be in jail. We don't know where Governor Newsom's going to stand on this thing, but we do know that he's announced he wants to close a prison in California, maybe two. So we can surmise where he's going to stand on it. But I don't know, Kelly, if you have other specific groups that have formally come out opposed to it or not. I don't know.
Nothing formal. Californians for Safety and Justice has formally come out for it. That is a group that I will say pretends to be a victims group, but is not. ACLU, you're absolutely correct. Jerry Brown. There's been indications, and it's mostly that Californians for Safety and Justice has been implying that we are anti-BLM. I have not seen that BLM has specifically come out against us. I think it's been an implication that one of the groups has made that's trying to make this a racial issue. But it's been implying that BLM has come out, but I've not seen that. So that's all we've seen so far.
Yeah, in fact, the Californians for Safety and Justice, they were one of the main supporters of Prop 47 and Prop 57 both.
Yeah.
So.
And just for what it's worth, and you can read into this whatever you want, that is, I believe that a lot of their funding is from George Soros.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's a big pool of money that has gone after our district attorneys and our justice system. And I'm so glad so many people are on here tonight to hear the difference in the reality, besides just someone giving a mantra out there. It's time we really understand what's happening in our communities and use our voice to make sure that our communities are safe places for our children. I can't even imagine, beating up a child and thinking that's okay. Raping someone who's unconscious and thinking that's okay. And having it be a misdemeanor, put them right back out on the streets. We saw what Zero Bail did. I mean, the police would, give them a ticket. They couldn't even arrest them and put them in jail. And it just continued and continued. And so this is where we have an opportunity to see some change for California and for our children and our children's children in the future and the safety of our communities.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you very much, Chief Lawrence and Kelly, for sharing with us. We are so grateful to have both of you really fighting for us and helping keep California safe. This is the website that you can learn more at, keepcalsafe.org. And there's also, I put the Facebook page in the chat if you want to learn and share about it so that neighbors and friends can learn about it. And these are two ways you can get in touch with Vicki if you're interested in learning more about her too. But thank you all so much for coming today. And thank you, Chief Lawrence, again for sharing with us.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sure that there's neighbors you can talk to and friends, and the flyer that we included when we mailed out the invite back to you, please take those, and even though it was 2-paged, you could take it and make them a 1-pager and share them with people. And I know that some of you are out there probably getting signatures for other things. Why don't you just take some of those flyers with you It's time that we reach out to the community and really let's see a difference on these propositions, because there's many of them on there in 2020, and you're going to want to read them and know what they are. There's, besides Proposition 20, there's quite a few other ones on there that have to do with changing Proposition 13 and the split roll, voting, just so many things. Just please take a look. And thank you for joining us. Chief Ron Lawrence, I just want to say thank you so much. And I will definitely reach out to some of the Rotaries and the other people that I know and let them know that they could have an opportunity to get in touch with you as well.
Thank you very much. We sure appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Okay, thank you.